I never imagined that the worst betrayal of my life would begin with a birthday toast. The room erupted in applause as my father lifted his wine glass. "To our daughter, Emily Carter," he said with a smile that fooled everyone except me. "Everything she owns today is because of this family." Everyone clinked their glasses. I smiled back. Because by then, I already knew the truth. I knew someone in that room had spent nearly a decade stealing my identity. I knew they had just tried to mortgage my home without my knowledge. And I knew that before the birthday cake was served, someone would quietly leave this table believing they were about to break into my house. The only problem? The FBI was already waiting for them. Nobody else at that dinner had any idea the celebration had become a trap. 6 weeks earlier, life had felt almost boring. I liked boring. At 35, I worked overnight shifts as an emergency room nurse in Columbus, Ohio. My 8-year-old daughter Lily stayed with my neighbor, Mrs. Henderson, whenever I worked late. We lived in a modest townhouse I had purchased after my divorce 3 years earlier. Nothing fancy. But every wall, every bill, every key belonged to me. That feeling meant everything after spending 12 years in a marriage where nothing ever truly felt like mine. Every Thursday evening, Lily and I drove 20 minutes to my parents' house for family dinner. My mother insisted. "Family dinners keep us connected," she'd say. Looking back, maybe they kept something else connected. I just didn't know it yet. The first crack appeared on an ordinary Tuesday afternoon. Lily had caught strep throat. After leaving the pediatrician, I stopped at a pharmacy to pick up antibiotics. I inserted my debit card. Declined. I frowned. I checked my balance. More than enough money. I tried another card. Declined again. People behind me shifted impatiently. My cheeks burned. Finally, I paid with cash I'd been saving for Lily's school trip. Driving home, something didn't sit right. Banks make mistakes. Cards fail. But 2 different accounts? That night, after Lily fell asleep, I opened my laptop. Instead of calling customer service, I pulled my credit report. One unfamiliar credit card. Then another. Then a personal loan. Then something much worse. A home equity application, using my name. Except I had never applied. My heart pounded harder with every page I opened. The mailing address on every account wasn't my townhouse. It was my parents' address. I stared at the screen for nearly 5 minutes without blinking. No. There had to be an explanation. There always was. My father had handled paperwork ever since I was in college. Birth certificate. Tax records. Insurance forms. Whenever something official arrived, he'd always say, "Don't worry. I'll take care of it." And I always believed him. The next morning, I called one of the lenders pretending to confirm my information. The representative casually verified the phone number attached to the application. It wasn't mine. It was my parents' landline. My stomach dropped. Suddenly memories I hadn't questioned for years began lining up like dominoes. The missing tax refund. The mysterious credit inquiry my dad dismissed as a clerical error. The documents he insisted on storing for safekeeping. None of it felt random anymore. That evening, I drove to family dinner as if nothing had happened. Mom hugged me. Dad carved the roast. My younger brother, Ethan, joked about football. Everyone looked completely normal. But for the first time, I wasn't looking at my family. I was looking at suspects. And before the week was over, I would discover something hidden inside my parents' house that would destroy every childhood memory I'd ever trusted. The following Thursday, I parked outside my parents' house with a smile on my face and a recorder running inside my purse. Not because I expected a confession. Because I had stopped trusting my own memories. If I was going to accuse the 2 people who raised me, I needed facts, not feelings. Dinner unfolded exactly as it always had. Mom complained about grocery prices. Dad lectured Ethan about changing his truck's oil. Lily giggled while showing Grandma a drawing she'd made at school. Watching them laugh together almost convinced me I was losing my mind. Maybe the credit report was wrong. Maybe there really was some ridiculous banking mistake. Then Mom looked at me and casually asked, "Emily, are you still keeping your important papers in that little fireproof safe?" I paused for half a second. "No," I lied. "I moved everything to the bank." A tiny flash of disappointment crossed her face before she smiled again. "Oh, smart idea. Too fast. Too rehearsed." That single expression told me more than any sentence could. Why would she care where I kept my documents? The next morning, instead of going home after work, I visited the county records office. An older clerk helped me search public filings connected to my property. At first, nothing. Then she frowned. "Ma'am, there's a power of attorney listed under your name from 3 years ago." My pulse froze. I never signed one. She slowly turned her monitor toward me. There it was. My name. My address. My signature. At least, it looked like my signature. Someone had practiced it well. Too well. The document gave my parents authority to handle financial matters on my behalf. Loans. Property. Banking. Nearly everything. The notarized date made my stomach twist. It had supposedly been signed while I was recovering from emergency surgery after Lily's birth. I remembered that week perfectly. I could barely sit upright. There was no chance I'd driven anywhere to sign legal paperwork. Someone had done it for me. I left the courthouse carrying certified copies and sat inside my car for almost an hour. Anger never came. Not yet. Only disbelief. I kept hearing my father's voice from childhood. Trust family before anyone else. How ironic. That afternoon I froze every credit file connected to my name. Within 24 hours my phone rang. Mom. Her voice sounded unusually nervous. "Honey, did something happen with your bank?" "What do you mean?" "Oh, nothing." She hesitated. "Your father was trying to verify something and they kept rejecting the information." I looked out my kitchen window. So the freeze had already interrupted whatever they were doing. Interesting. Very interesting. I apologized as if I knew nothing. She changed the subject immediately. But now I knew they were still actively using my identity. This wasn't ancient history. It was happening in real time. Over the next several days, I built my own investigation. Sticky notes covered my dining room wall. Every loan. Every credit card. Every unexplained inquiry. Every suspicious date. Patterns began appearing. Each fraudulent account opened during major moments in my life. My college graduation. My wedding. My divorce. Lily's birth. While I was distracted by life's biggest milestones, someone had quietly stolen pieces of my future. Then another discovery stopped me cold. A hard credit inquiry dated only 3 weeks earlier. Not under my social security number. Under Lily's. My 8-year-old daughter. I couldn't breathe. They weren't finished with me. They had already chosen their next victim. That night, I immediately froze Lily's credit and contacted a financial crimes investigator recommended by the bank. The detective listened without interrupting as I laid my folder across his desk. When he reached the inquiry on Lily's file, his expression changed completely. He closed the folder, looked directly into my eyes, and said quietly, "Mrs. Carter, this case just became much bigger than identity theft." The morning of my birthday arrived with clear skies and a knot in my stomach. Lily spent the afternoon at my best friend Sarah's house, happily unaware that anything was wrong. Before leaving, she hugged me and whispered, "Save me a piece of cake." I promised I would. Then I drove to my parents' house. Everything looked perfectly normal. My mother greeted me with an unusually warm embrace. My father smiled as if nothing in the world had changed. Ethan was already setting the table, joking about how I was officially getting old. I laughed with them. Inside, I was counting every minute. Dinner moved exactly as Detective Mitchell predicted. Halfway through the meal, my mother leaned toward my father and spoke so quietly that most people at the table never noticed. Dad gave a slight nod. Seconds later, Ethan pushed back his chair. "I've got to take a quick call," he said, grabbing his truck keys. No one questioned him. Except me. I watched him leave through the front door. Without touching my phone, I knew Detective Mitchell's team had just seen the same thing. I kept eating. I complimented my mother's lasagna. I even accepted a second slice of birthday cake. Nearly an hour later, the front door burst open. Ethan stumbled inside, pale and shaking. His eyes searched the room until they landed on Mom. "They were waiting," he whispered. "The police, they were already there." The room fell silent. My father's face drained of color. My mother slowly turned toward me. For the first time in my life, she looked afraid. "What did you do?" she demanded. I calmly placed my fork on the table and met her eyes. "I didn't do anything," I said quietly. "I just stopped protecting the people who never stopped stealing from me." My mother shot to her feet so quickly that her chair scraped across the hardwood floor. "You've destroyed this family," she shouted. I didn't raise my voice. "No," I replied. "The day you forged my name, you destroyed it." For a long moment, no one spoke. Then my father let out a slow breath, his shoulders sinking as though he had been carrying the weight for years. "It's true," he admitted quietly. "We did it." The words hit the room like thunder. My aunt covered her mouth. Ethan stared at the floor, unable to look at me. Minutes later, Detective Ryan Mitchell walked through the front door with two uniformed officers. They had already stopped the attempted lock change at my townhouse and secured the evidence. As they read my parents their rights, my mother kept repeating, "I only wanted to help the family." But helping doesn't require forged signatures. Helping doesn't steal a daughter's future. And it certainly doesn't target an 8-year-old granddaughter. The months that followed weren't easy. Every fraudulent account disappeared from my credit report one by one. The fake loan was canceled before a single dollar was released. My parents eventually accepted plea agreements that included fraud, forgery, and identity theft charges. Ethan cooperated with investigators, admitting his role in exchange for a reduced sentence. It didn't erase what he'd done, but it finally exposed the truth. Life slowly became peaceful again. Lily rode her bike through our neighborhood every afternoon without a care in the world. I installed a new lock, not because I was afraid anymore, but because it reminded me that this home truly belonged to us. One evening, Lily asked, "Mom, are we safe now?" I smiled, wrapped my arm around her, and answered honestly. "Yes, sweetheart. We are." Because I finally learned that family isn't defined by blood. It's defined by the people who protect your name instead of stealing it.